A small request before starting the video. If you love the channel's topic, then subscribe to the channel now and press the bell icon next to it. Because one of your subscriptions encourages me to make better videos. Walter Brennan was a notable actor who received the Best Actor award in Hollywood. Recipient of 3 Supporting Actor awards and a 4th nomination for being a true New England Yankee at birth. Walter's portrayal of country boy characters in Western movies, such as Deputy Stumpy in Rio Bravo and Judge Roy Bean in The Westerner, captivated fans worldwide. However, rumors of his racism, paranoia, and hatred persisted, prompting fans to seek justice. On July 25, 1894, Walter Andrew Brennan was born in Lynn, Massachusetts, to Irish immigrant parents. His father, an engineer and inventor, wanted him to become an engineer, so he enrolled in Ringe Technical School in Cambridge, Massachusetts, a prep school for MIT. However, his passion for learning never waned. Walter, a passionate actor, performed in amateur acting societies and school plays at Ringe Technical High School. He passed all his regular subjects but became increasingly involved in the acting club. He struggled to express his desire to act to his father. Walter was enlisted in the U.S. Army and was posted to the private 101st Field Artillery Regiment in France, where he served for 2 years. During the battle on a fateful day, Walter got injured after being exposed to mustard gas, which affected his vocal cords. Perhaps it was a blessing in disguise, as it left him with his unique high-pitched voice. After recovering from the accident, he was discharged from the Army and returned to the U.S. Here he started working as a financial reporter for a newspaper. In Boston he also worked as a lumberjack, a ditch digger and a bank messenger. Soon he decided to focus his energy on real estate. This new business made his fortunes, however he lost it all in the 1925 real estate slump. He started planning to move to Guatemala and eventually work as a pineapple farmer. This was when a colleague of his heard and liked his sales pitch and advised him to try going to LA to join Hollywood as an extra in movies MOV, for which he would be paid $7.50 a day. Perhaps this kindled the lost zeal for acting within him, and with the encouragement of his fiancée Ruth Wells he mustered the courage to tell his family and hers of his dreams. However, neither of the families was pleased to hear this, especially the Wells. His father-in-law strongly disagreed and refused to bless their union, but this didn't stop them from getting married, and immediately after their wedding they headed for California. He stated that they had an old touring car that fairly ran well, but its sheltering condition was alarming. During a rainstorm, with the top flapping and side curtains coming loose, an extra strong wind took the top of the driver's seat area off. Surprisingly, Walter's new wife was unshaken by the event. In fact, Walter commented on the incident saying, "But my new wife was equal to the situation. She stuck an umbrella up through the rip, opened it, and away we went again." I think that bit was used in 2 or 3 comedy films on getting to California. Things weren't as easy and straightforward as they had thought. They were shocked at the number of talented actors that they saw in Hollywood and those just wandering the town. Walter, however, wasn't here to play around and went straight into action. Immediately after he arrived, he followed others to join the long lines outside the casting offices. This was where he met Gary Cooper, who was also having the same kind of trouble, but finally an opportunity came up. According to him, "I finally got a break, but only because I knew how to make a jackass of myself." Clearly Walter was the kind of man that never gave up, and looking at this story it was true. One afternoon, after Walter had stood in the queue for so long he was denied access by the casting director, and angry and frustrated Walter saw a group of actors trying to get a donkey to bray. He walked up to the crew and offered to produce the sound himself, but with the condition that he also be a part of the film. The director was very quick to give him a shot, and Walter did a great bray. This funny noise making would be his introduction to screen. With this he began taking small parts in a series of motion pictures, mostly roles without dialogue. After that he played various bit parts and featured roles ranging from youthful coochie to elderly patriarchs. His early appearances included Webs of Steel 1925, Lorraine of the Lions 1925 and others. In one of these Richard Thorpe found Walter and used him as an extra several times. Walter had to act in over 30 movies before finally landing his first film in 1930, Universal's lavish musical revue King of Jazz, in which he played a more significant role. However, in 1932 Walter had an accident. He reportedly lost some teeth while on the set of an action film. He fell to the ground and his opponent in the movie made a mistake and kicked him so hard in the face he lost most of his front teeth. There were other rumors that claimed he was actually kicked in the mouth by a mule. After treatment he had to start using artificial teeth. For Walter, when he removed his dentures and he looked 40 years older than his real age, which gave him an edge among his contemporaries in acting as an old man. Whenever he was given a role to act in, he would walk up to the director and ask with or without. The directors were constantly confused and would ask with or without what. He will then remove his dentures and answer without teeth. I got my teeth kicked out. That's what really did it. His first breakthrough in the film industry came with a role he took in The Wedding Night. He was hired for a minor role as a taxi driver in the film, but his acting impressed Goldwyn and the producer struck a long-term deal with him. This led to a larger part in Barbary Coast 1935, the first of the actor's 7 collaborations with director Howard Hawks. Walter himself confirms this, saying the part of Jenkins in Wedding Night was a good one, but I was lucky again and followed it with the part of Old Atrocity in Barbary Coast that really set me up. From then on, Walter always had work to do. His ticket-winning role was his part as the Swedish lumberman Swan Bostrom in Goldwyn's 1936 Come and Get It. This one gave him the title and award of the first Best Supporting Actor in the Academy Award. Just 2 years later he won another Academy Award for the second time for his character as a grandfatherly horse farm owner in Kentucky. He won his third Academy Award for his role as Judge Roy Bean in The Westerner in 1940, which also starred Gary Cooper. They both worked together frequently in other films, as Walter himself confirmed. Coop didn't mind. I guess Mr. Brennan said anyway. He was one of the first to congratulate me when I got my third Oscar for that job, and we worked together an awful lot after that. Very strange. How could he have won 3 Oscars in the space of 5 years? The votes must have surely been rigged in his favor. How true is that? Let's delve into the details. It was very rare for such a thing to happen in the 1930s and 40s, when very few well-established actors had won more than 1 Oscar for their entire career. Why would Brennan win more within 5 years? Surely there was a lot of help going on behind the scenes for him to have that much in such a small time frame. Well, maybe, but that would depend on your definition of being rigged. It's okay to doubt the status of an Oscar winner. Although Walter's acting abilities were unquestionable, his rapid Oscar wins were attributed to the fact that extras were allowed to vote at the time. His last 2 wins were attributed to the high level of support he received from the Extras Union, whose members were allowed to vote from 1936 to 1940. His third win, for The Westerner, caused a scandal that led to the Extras voting ban. Walter enjoyed his job and settled for consistent TV shows and family films as he aged. He initially declined offers to star in regular TV series, but in the late 1950s, he played Grandpa Amos in The Real McCoys, a successful sitcom. He appeared in over 200 scenes before the show ended. The Real McCoy moved to CBS for a final season, and Walter founded Brennan Westgate Productions with Irving Pincus. Walter preferred television over movies due to shorter layoffs and no long waits for good parts. Despite working 5 days a week for most of the year, he enjoys his job and looks forward to Monday mornings. He also guest-starred on episodes of Playhouse Lux Video Theater, at the Schlitz Playhouse, Ethel Barrymore Theater, Cavalcade of America, and Ford Television Theater. From 1956, he played Outlaw Joe. In 1953 to 1954, Dick Powell played Zane Gry Theater in the ABC series Jukebox Jury, appearing as a musical judge and supporting John Wayne and Dean Martin in Rio Bravo. He also voiced animations and sang, including his biggest hit, Old Rivers, about an old farm. Walter entered the top 40 again with Mama Sang a Song on November 17, 1962, under Brennan Productions. Walter starred in 1962's Big Sag Shootout in MGM's epic 1963's How the West Was Won as a villainous river pirate. Despite his advanced age, Walter remained committed to his beliefs, such as being a Roman Catholic, but never revealed this information, stating he was too old to be religious. He gave a statement at Project Prayer, but it appears we are losing something many sacrificed for. In 1964, over 2,500 people attended a demonstration at the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles to defend school prayer, which the Supreme Court had declared unconstitutional in 1962 and 1963. The event's goal was to send letters to Congress defending the event. While participating in activism, Walter played a supporting role in Disney's 1965 film Those Calloway, starring alongside Brandon Dwight. In 1967, he was invited to star in another ABC series. In 1967 to 1969, he played an older dad searching for his gunfighter son in the Guns of Wilsonnet series. He later acted in other movies and participated in the second season of Rome with Love on CBS. The 1969 to 1971 series starred him alongside John Forzee and was his last permanent role on television. He also appeared on Smith and Jones. He began acting in Herbie Rides Again for Disney in 1973, but was replaced due to poor health. His last screen appearance was in Smoke in the Wind, a 1975 Western directed by Joseph Kane. Despite his personality and core values, the stories were not favorable. Walter was deemed a racist and anti-IL rights activist. Let's examine his conduct that led to this favorable conclusion in the 1960s. Brennan was convinced that the civil rights and anti-war movements were the work of some nefarious communist from overseas. It was reported how Walter jubilated with glee when reports came in concerning the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. It's clearly only a heartless monster that would rejoice at the death of a fellow human. Even if you both shared opposing views, many would agree that it was a display of cruelty to rejoice at the ruthless murder of someone else. He held the belief that activists were pawns dancing to the tune of Marxists who were hellbent on ruling the world. His recorded interviews from this time feature him voicing his disapproval of these conspiratorial views. In one of his interviews, he told the reporter that the riots in Newark and Watson protests in Birmingham, Alabama were a result of the black Americans who should have been perfectly content with their situation. He insinuated that they were being stirred up and antagonized by some troublemaking people. Questioned the heartlessness of a devious actor who advocated for gun violence against rioters in Watts. He supported the idea that people should be killed for speaking up for their rights, regardless of their suffering. In his speech, Grandpa Amos promoted hatred and prejudice, citing the civil rights movement among African Americans. Movement were led by Congressman Adam Clayton Powell, who manipulated to push a communist to take over the nation. He was so ideological that he even held a deep-rooted belief that John Wayne was a communist. This was somebody he had worked with and even supported at some point in his life. Though this looks like it was something that couldn't possibly happen, it was happening. Walter was turning against friends, acquaintances and colleagues. He wasn't only doing that, he was also using the appeal of his well-known character to spread hatred among people, and that was just wrong. Portraying the character of Grandpa Amos on the Real McCoy TV series, in life he was nothing as good and loving as the lovely character he portrayed. He was a direct opposite. Everett Greenbaum, who wrote 32 episodes of The Real McCoy, described Walter as a bigot who frequently uttered racist remarks. Imagine someone who worked so long with Walter coming out to spill that about him. Most fans who were in doubt began to be convinced that this man had his failings which had been overlooked for so long. He had been literally hiding his racist beliefs behind his kindly man of the people character that audiences absolutely adored. But Walter didn't stop there. He continued to shock people even more. When Senator Robert F. Kennedy was murdered in 1968, the cast and crew of the Guns of Wilsonnet said that Brennan jubilated for the murder of Kennedy. Who does such a thing for one who claims to be a Christian? He demonstrated the direct opposite of the biblical command, love your neighbor as yourself. Although some would argue that Walter only got in touch with his religious side because he was getting old. He was a member of the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals and a well-known conservative Republican. So when Martin Luther died and he was jubilating, it looked like he just hated blacks alone. But when he celebrated the death of Kennedy, it was now a question of whether Walter just hated freedom. He held a strong belief that Robert F. Kennedy was a communist, and he branded anyone around him who supported Kennedy as a communist. Walter felt that endorsing the political beliefs of any Kennedy was tantamount to endorsing Mark and Lenin, for example, or emphasis. Because Barry Goldwater had voted against the 1964 Civil Rights Acts, he had backed Goldwater in the 1964 U.S. presidential election. In 1968 he also endorsed George Wallace, believing Richard Nixon was too liberal to be a Republican. He supported far-right candidate John Schmitz in 1972. Schmidt was a member of the John Burr Society, and he chaired the Finance Committee and voiced a campaign advertisement for Schmidt. Additionally, he supported Ronald Reagan for governor of California in 1966 and for re-election in 1970. Clearly the man hated freedom or anything that had to do with people being able to make up their own minds. Walter even held an unshakable belief, or much more specifically a paranoia, that the Soviets were going to invade the United States in an attempt to destroy democracy and start communism. So to deal with that, he spent money on the construction of a bunker under his estate located in Los Angeles, where he stored lots of firearms, food rations and other survival supplies. He also instructed his daughter to ban his grandchildren from listening to the Beatles. Like this was literally the biggest band in the world. His fear: he didn't want his descendants to become carriers of the decadence of modernity and all its evil. Perhaps this was why he acquired the 120,000-acre Lightning Creek ranch located 20 miles north of Jose, Oregon, where he constructed a movie theater, a variety store and the Indian Lodge Motel there, so his family would reside there and be free of the evils of progress and development. In fact, if you thought he stopped at his own family, you are joking. It was reported that as he grew older he would question his co-workers about their voting history, and if anyone admitted to having voted for anyone as radical as a Democrat, Walter would begin to lecture them on the coming doom of dear old America. During his later years of retirement, he stayed on his ranch in the Ventura County neighborhood of Missouri Park. On September 21, 1974, he passed away in Oxnard, California at the age of 80 from emphysema. They interred his bones in the San Fernando Mission Cemetery in Los Angeles. Ruth Wells, his wife, and their 3 children, Arthur, Walter and Ruth with grandchildren, survived him. Historians and critics still rank him as one of the greatest actors of all time. Throughout his 50-year career, he made over 230 film appearances with successes many of his contemporaries cannot dare to boast of. It earned him a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame at 6501 Hollywood Boulevard. Additionally, he was honored with his picture hanging on the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum in Oklahoma City, where he was inducted into the Hall of Great Western Performers in 1970. Despite his success, Walter was clearly a man of many flaws, which included old-fashioned beliefs, paranoia and complete racism. Some may argue that he was simply born in a time when the world knew no better, but that would be a weak argument given that there were other actors and actresses who were born during that period and decidedly refused to exhibit the same characteristics as Mr. Walter.